There's rumors that the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas could be extended. Human Rights Watch came out with a report saying that the explosion in the hospital courtyard a couple weeks ago was caused by a Palestinian rocket, and U.S. forces interdict Houthi pirates in the Gulf of Aden. What's going on, everyone? Let's take a look at some updates as it relates to the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. I'm recording this at 9:30 a.m. Central on Monday, November 27th, 2023. Yesterday, the third day of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, saw 17 hostages released. 6 of them were 10 years old or younger. Now, the information right now in terms of the numbers is a little bit vague. So the original deal struck between Israel and Hamas was for 50 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza to be released in exchange for 150 Palestinian prisoners detained by Israel. But it looks like, according to a couple reports, we may have already surpassed that in a couple ways. So I have seen at this point different outlets saying everywhere from 41 to 60 hostages have so far been released. That's been made complicated by the fact that there have been some side deals negotiated with foreign governments and Hamas for some of the foreign nationals, the non-Israeli citizens, to be released from captivity. The total number of Palestinians released is also a little bit vague right now. From what I've seen, that appears to be on or about 117 total over the first 3 days. Then earlier today, an Israeli spokesperson said that 184 hostages still remain in Gaza. Now, previous hostage releases over the past couple days have occurred down south at the Rafah crossing into Egypt, but yesterday, some of these hostages were handed over in the middle of the Gaza Strip, suggesting that a handful of those still in captivity might be held in and around Gaza City to the north. Then looking at a map, there is still a sizable portion of Gaza City that the IDF has yet to enter. So we have to expect that when this ceasefire expires, whether it's after 4 days or if it's extended, more on that in a second, this is going to be one of their areas of focus, moving into and fully clearing Gaza City itself. Now, Hamas put out yesterday through some of their official channels that they want to extend the ceasefire. They said, quote, "The Islamic resistance movement Hamas seeks to extend the truce after the 4-day period ends through serious efforts to increase the number of those released from imprisonment as stipulated in the humanitarian ceasefire agreement." As a note, 10 hostages. The original agreement said that for every additional 10 hostages above the 50 that are released would allow for 1 additional day of a ceasefire. It sounds like those negotiations are ongoing right now, and they could be close, but again, these are pretty tricky negotiations, so nothing is certain until it actually happens. And real quick, I don't know if this is the right way to do this. I'm going to do it anyways and see what happens. I'm hiring like a researcher / analyst around war, conflict, and national security subjects. If you're interested, the link to the application's in the description below. Check it out. You got to be at least 18 years old, but there's no prior professional experience required here. You can learn most of this stuff on your own. So, if you enjoy kind of digging through Russian mill blogger rants to figure out what's actually going on at Avdiivka or parsing jihadi Telegram channels to try to figure out who launched the most recent drone attack against American forces, this could be for you, because that's essentially what I'm looking for. Again, link in the description if interested in applying. Then overnight, Israel released footage showing some of their special operations forces conducting operations in and around Gaza City. This group is one of the organizations that would have spearheaded the raid into Shifa Hospital a couple weeks ago. And Israel says that during the course of the past few weeks, this unit has located countless tunnels, multiple weapons, anti-tank charges, and grenades across various Hamas facilities. They also say prior to this unit's work in Gaza City, they were tasked with clearing Hamas terrorists out of Israeli territory on and shortly after the October 7th attacks. Israel added that during those operations, this specific unit eliminated dozens of Hamas militants and rescued countless Israeli civilians. Additionally, we now have confirmation that Mohammed Hamadeh, also known as Abu Ibrahim, a spokesperson for Hamas, was killed in Israeli airstrikes a few days ago. So this news first started to trickle out right about the time the ceasefire went into effect, saying that he was killed in an airstrike a few days prior to that, but it was just confirmed on Hamas Telegram channels earlier today. That in terms of Israeli operations outside of Gaza, the northern front has been relatively quiet. Not a lot of back and forth with Hezbollah since the truce went into effect a couple days ago. But there was a reported Israeli strike on the Damascus International Airport. This came through Syrian state media, saying that Syrian air defenses responded to an Israeli missile aggression that targeted Damascus International Airports and points into the Damascus countryside, causing the airport to be put out of service and some material losses. As of this recording, there is no comment yet from the Israeli military. Now, Israel has struck Syrian airports a handful of times since October 7th, and the reason for that is that these airports have been suspected of being used to smuggle military equipment in from Iran to their various militia groups all across the region. So the Israeli strike taking out that runway for a period of time, at the very least, delays the bringing of that military equipment and weapons into what could be a new front for Israel. Then the non-governmental organization Human Rights Watch issued a report yesterday that's getting a lot of attention. So in regards to the strike in the hospital courtyard a couple weeks ago in Gaza, they said, quote, "It resulted from an apparent rocket-propelled munition, such as those commonly used by Palestinian armed groups," saying the Ministry of Health in Gaza reported that 471 people were killed and 342 injured. Human Rights Watch was unable to corroborate the count, which is significantly higher than other estimates, displays an unusually high killed-to-injured ratio, and appears out of proportion with the damage on site. Now, they did say they spoke with a handful of people that said there were a lot of casualties, a lot of people killed, a lot of wounded. They're just calling out that that specific estimate that was thrown out does not seem consistent with other evidence provided. Continuing, they say Human Rights Watch investigated the explosion by reviewing publicly available photos and videos, analyzing satellite imagery, interviewing 5 witnesses to the incident and its aftermath, reviewing analysis published by other organizations, and consulting experts. Human Rights Watch was not on scene. It's one of the problems here. With any of the things that are happening in Gaza right now, we really are not getting independent third parties on the ground able to come up with or conduct their investigations. One of the major challenges right now is around the munition fragments. Anytime something goes boom, there's going to be a fragment remaining to some degree. And the further we get away from that incident, the harder it is to prove definitively that that fragment came from that blast site, right? And that it wasn't moved from somewhere else. And that's one of the challenges Human Rights Watch hits on here. They say, quote, "There are no known images of any munition remnants publicly available, and Human Rights Watch was unable to visit the scene, preventing conclusive identification of the munition." They wrap up by saying Gaza authorities and Israel should publicly provide all information that they hold regarding the incident, in particular evidence concerning the munition remnants. Medical records showing the types of injuries sustained by the victims, subject to privacy and confidentiality protections, and other types of evidence such as unpublished videos of the explosion could also shed light on the cause of the explosion. Look, for all the video and picture analysis that people are able to do from afar, the most definitive piece of evidence would have been munition fragments produced in the immediate aftermath of the strike. I'm sure people still would have pushed back at that point, but it would have answered a lot of questions. And, that not being made public, that's on Hamas. They control that territory. They have access to that blast site, not Israel. And the fact that that has not been made public, no munition fragments at this point, it leaves open the door for a lot of skepticism that the strike was the responsibility of Israel, whether it was on purpose or on accident. Now, Hamas did address this report. Of course, they condemned it, saying that it aligned with the Zionist enemy's narrative and that there is no clear material evidence for its conclusion. So U.S. forces in the Gulf of Aden intercepted Houthi pirates as they tried to seize another civilian ship. So, look, the Houthis have really been ramping things up over the past couple weeks. Do you remember they shot down a Reaper drone off the coast of Yemen? I feel like people already forgot about that. Anyways, they've also launched countless drones and missiles at southern Israel, some intercepted by Israel, others intercepted by U.S. forces in the Red Sea. That same ship, the USS Thomas Hudner in the Red Sea, at one point says that they were attacked directly. They shot down the Houthi drones. Then last week, the Houthis captured an Israeli-affiliated ship. They still have that ship. Not clear what's going to happen there. And then yesterday, looks like they tried again. So the USS Mason responded to a distress call from the Central Park tanker in the Gulf of Aden. Task Force 151, which is a coalition counter-piracy task force, headed that way, which ended up being a mixture of U.S. and Japanese naval vessels. The Chinese Navy also had ships in the region, in the area, in the immediate area, and I guess they decided to sit this one out, didn't want to get involved, so maybe next time. Upon arrival, coalition elements demanded the immediate release of the vessel, and the 5 armed individuals who tried to take over the ship debarked and attempted to flee via a small boat that they had arrived in. The Mason pursued the attackers with helicopter support overhead, resulting in their eventual surrender and the arrest, and those 5 are now being questioned. Then right after those 5 were detained and the Central Park was free to go, 2 ballistic missiles were fired from Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen towards the general location of both the USS Mason and the Central Park tanker. The missiles landed about 10 miles short, did not make it all the way to the ships. And while there is no damage or injuries reported from those attempted attacks, this was a pretty significant escalation by the Houthis against U.S. forces. Would not be surprised if there's some sort of retaliatory strike in the coming days. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the sit reps I put out on Substack. Link is in the description below. Substack now also has ad-free, sponsor-free videos published about 1 hour before they go live on YouTube. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.